You spend 3 hours every day working on your business, but at the end of the week, you have 0 clients and 0 revenue, and deep down you know exactly why. You are not actually working on your business at all, you are just hiding from the one thing that would actually make you money. There is an invisible power that holds you back and pulls you back to do the work that is required for your company growth. And you have no clue what is that, why you cannot work on things that actually matter, and what is holding you back to do the work required. Once I understood this, everything changed for me. It's what helped me generate millions in revenue, and after working closely with hundreds of companies, I've seen the same pattern again and again. Most entrepreneurs are not held back by strategy or knowledge, but the same invisible limitation they never know about. Well, this has everything to do with whether you can make yourself to do the work that stops you, because right now there is an invisible force inside of your brain that is actively stopping your success every day. And until you understand what is this and how to beat that, nothing else will matter. By the way, if you want my complete training on building a sales system that scales to 6 figures a month, the link in the description below. But let me show you what is really happening inside of your head right now. For example, you sit down on Monday morning with your list of tasks, 10 calls to make, 20 messages to send, simple work that you know exactly how to do, but 2 hours later you have reorganized your CRM for the 3rd time this month, updated your LinkedIn profile with tweaks that don't actually matter, and researched 3 new marketing strategies you will never implement. Also, you are checking your emails 14 times looking for responses that haven't arrived. So what you end up with, that the calls are not made and the messages are not sent, and you feel busy, you feel productive, and you even feel accomplished from all organizing and reorganizing. But deep down, you know the truth. You just spent 2 hours avoiding the only work that actually matters. And this happens every day because your brain evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to keep humans alive in a world where survival meant one thing: avoid danger and conserve energy. So your ancestors didn't think about building the wealth or scaling business, they focused on finding the food and avoiding the predators and maintaining their place in tribe. Because the people who survived were the ones that played it safe and conserved their energy, and once it acted when immediately survival demanded it. So which means people only worked on things that required their survival. This created a brain that constantly evaluates every action through one filter, which is, do I need to do this thing right now to stay alive or not? And if the answer is no, your brain shuts down motivation completely. It feels that this is not necessary. So when you sit down to make calls or send outreach messages, your survival system doesn't recognize productive work at all, because all it sees is wasted energy on something that doesn't feed you and doesn't protect you from immediate danger and doesn't secure your social position. So it creates resistance and that heavy feeling and those distracting thoughts and that sudden urge to do literally anything else in your brain, actively stopping you from what it perceives as pointless energy spent. Now you think you are afraid of rejection or failure, but that's only the surface level, because the real challenge is discovering who you actually are. Your brain built a comfortable story where you're smart and you're capable, you have what it takes, but taking real action tests that story against a reality. So if you spend 500 messages and nobody responds, if you make 1,000 calls and nobody wants to talk to you, for example, publish the content and nobody reacts, you might have to face something difficult. Maybe the story is not true and the problem is you care deeply, which makes your action harder because you care about not looking silly or awkward when you're learning something new. So you cannot become good at something without being bad at it at first. If you wait until you are confident you won't look foolish, you will never start. Avoiding the discomfort guarantees you stay exactly where you are right now. So even though your brain tells you wait until you are ready, even though your identity wants to protect itself from looking foolish, even though everything inside of you screams don't do this, you need to intentionally force yourself to do it anyway. Now, here's how your brain tricks you with busy work. Because you spent 3 hours perfecting your website, even though it was fine yesterday. You reorganize your CRM or your computer, even though the organization was working. You research marketing strategies, even though you already know there are 3 strategies that you didn't try it yet, that you planned last week. Then you rewrite your offer for so many times, you plan content, you never publish it. And you color code your pipeline, and every bit of this feels a little bit productive, but none of this moves your business forward. So your brain redirects your work towards the activities that feel safe, because updating your website is comfortable. Organizing your CRM is comfortable. Reading about marketing is very comfortable. But calling people is uncomfortable because people might say no to you. You might get some rejections. And outreach is also not comfortable because they might ignore you. People might say no to you. These uncomfortable actions are exactly what you need to grow. But your survival system pushes you away from them and toward the comfortable things that don't actually matter. So if you keep doing comfortable work, you will stay stuck forever because the comfortable work feels productive and gives you a sense of accomplishment and lets you tell yourself you are working on your business. But it creates zero results. So you can organize your computer perfectly and you can have the most beautiful website and you can research every strategy you created and you will still have zero clients and zero revenue if you never do uncomfortable work. Think about it like going to the gym where nobody wakes up excited to lift heavy weightings and feel muscle pain, but you want to get in shape. You need to intentionally go to the gym and put stress on your body. The stress is uncomfortable and the pain is actually real, but that stress, that pain, is exactly what makes your muscle grow. And you can read about fitness, you can buy workout clothes and watch trainings. You can actually prepare your meal and none of it makes you fit. Only the painful work, actually lifting weights, create the results. And the business works identically, where you need to intentionally do the painful work every day, which means calling people, writing them, reaching out, following up. Make those calls even when you don't want to do it. Send the messages even when you feel uncertain about it. Publish the content even when it feels imperfect, and have those sales conversations even when rejection is likely to come. Because this painful work is what builds your skills and tests your messaging and generates opportunity and creates revenue. The moment you notice yourself doing the work that feels productive but doesn't scale you at all, stop and ask yourself, is this moving my business forward? Or am I just doing the comfortable thing instead of the uncomfortable thing I should be actually doing? The answer is almost always that you are avoiding the uncomfortable work. And when you catch yourself in that pattern, you need to immediately switch to the painful task, not tomorrow, not after you finish organizing, but actually right now. Now, perfectionism is what happens when you believe that overthinking and overplanning will make everything work perfectly. So you convince yourself that if you think about it and plan it better and refine it longer, then you finally launch it and it will be great. But while you're trying to perfect everything, the market is actually moving and your competitors are learning from the real feedback and you are learning from nothing. Great products and great content come from trying something and getting real feedback from real people and learning what works and improving based on the feedback, and anything trying again and repeating that cycle dozens of times. So you can spend 6 months planning the perfect sales message in your head, or you can send 100 messages this week and see which ones actually responses and learn what real people actually care about and send another 100 next week. The market doesn't care what sounds good in your head. The market only responds to what actually resonates when real people see it. And perfectionists never test their ideas because they are waiting for it to be perfect first, which means they never learn what actually works. This is why perfectionists with brilliant ideas stay broke, while imperfect executors with average ideas, they get rich, because the perfectionist spends years refining an idea that never sees the market, while the executor launches something average and learns what the market actually wants and improves based on the real feedback. But be honest right now, are you perfectionist or are you testing? Because one makes you money and one keeps you broke. Now here's what nobody tells you. You work all day and nothing changes, where you don't get responses and you can't book the calls and you close no deals. So you do outreach for a week and your pipeline still stays empty. You make calls for a month and zero progress. Then your brain thinks that it is meaningless because it expects immediate results. Because your survival system evolved expecting quick feedback, where you hunt today and you eat today. You build shelter and then you sleep. You help someone and they thank you immediately. But when you do sales, you send messages on Monday and maybe someone responds on Wednesday, and that might become a call on Friday, which might lead to proposal next week, right? Which means you might close after 2 weeks and money might arrive a month after that. So between doing the work and seeing the reward weeks or months after that, Your survival system doesn't interpret this as success because it's delayed. It actually thinks that nothing is working. You are wasting time. Now, here's what shocked me when I analyzed successful entrepreneurs. The ones who made it were not smarter or more talented. They just had a higher tolerance for doing uncomfortable work over and over while seeing zero results. Most entrepreneurs lose the battle here because they don't understand that systematic growth operate on delayed gratification, where the skills you are building right now won't pay off for a month and the habits you are forming today won't show results for weeks. I've seen entrepreneurs work for 6 or 12 months seeing almost no results. Then suddenly they scale because everything they built finally compounded and there is no overnight success. The people who scale fast invested heavily in the past by building skills when nobody was watching and forming habits, when nothing was working. So if you quit during this phase, you guarantee the failure. Every successful business went through this exact phase where the work felt pointless and result seemed non-existent. But successful people kept going anyway, not because they felt motivated, but not because they saw the results, but because they understood this phase is required for growth. Think about entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs or entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos. They went through all these phases. So here's the system. Every morning before you check email and before you do anything comfortable, you identify the one uncomfortable task that matters most for your business today. Making calls scares you. That's the task. Sending outreach makes you nervous. That's the task. Publishing content where people might judge you. That's the task, because the uncomfortable feeling is the signal that you have identified the right task. So do that task first for a specific amount of time or number of repetitions. Not I will make some calls today, but I will make 50 calls before 10 a.m. Not I will send messages, but I will send 100 messages in the next 2 hours. Make it concrete and measurable and time bound. And when resistance appears within the 30 seconds of starting, recognize it and name it out loud. That's my survival brain trying to protect me. I am doing this anyway. Then track completion, not the results. Because at the end of the day, you ask yourself, did I do the uncomfortable thing I committed to do this morning? And if the answer is yes, that's the win. For example, made 50 calls, booked 0 meetings. Still a win, because you did uncomfortable work and built the skill. You sent 100 messages and got 0 responses. Still a win, because you executed the system. Make this non-negotiable, where you don't negotiate with yourself about whether to do it or you wait until you feel motivated. You don't do comfortable work first, hoping you will have energy left later. You do the uncomfortable task first and you build the identity of someone who does hard things regardless of how they feel. Now, beliefs don't change through affirmations or positive thinking. Your belief will change through evidence and telling yourself, I am good at sales. When you never close the deal, doesn't work because your brain knows it's not true. But here's how beliefs actually change. The belief changes after the action, not before. So you can't think your way to confidence, you can only act your way to be there. That's why waiting until you feel confident guarantees you will never start, because confidence comes from evidence and evidence comes from action. So you must do the work even when you don't believe in yourself yet. You can't solve this trying harder as the same person, because the person you are right now created the results you have right now. So the different results that require becoming a different person who thinks differently and acts differently. I went from event to event, took every course and learned everything I could, and I knew that to do that I was not doing because I would wake up and knowing that I need to handle important tasks, but I couldn't make this myself. Understanding business strategy is not enough. Changing how you think internally is what actually changes everything externally. Because every time I reached a new level, it happened because I started seeing the world completely different. Someone making 50,000 per year sees the world completely differently from someone who is making $500,000. And someone who is making 5 million a year sees the world completely different from the person who is making $500,000 a year. And the most successful people see reality more clearly and understand how things actually work. Think about who you actually want to become, not what you want to have, but who you want to be. How do they think? How do they act? What do they believe? How do they spend time? What standards do they hold? Once you have clarity, you can work backwards, where you see the gap between who you are right now and who you need to become, what kind of identity you need to have to get those results. Then you start changing those things deliberately. When you have this clarity, your decisions will become simple, because you will ask yourself, would the person who I want to become will take this decision? And when you want to skip the work, you ask yourself, would that version of myself would skip that work? And the answer is usually no. That gives you the strength to push it through. What actually decides if you win is whether you can show up and do the work daily. This is invisible force that pulls you back. And whether you are willing to become a different person or not. And you can't blame the market or economy or competition, algorithms, because how others make work, even regardless, the algorithm and competition and everything, they have the same resources that you also have. You know why they achieve those results? Because they execute consistently. Despite of feeling the same discomfort, they learn to do the work while uncomfortable. They change their beliefs. Through accumulated evidence, they raise their standards progressively, which is very important. So those people became different people. So the winners are not people who never feel resistance, because every successful people feels that. But the difference is whether they want to do the work anyway. They learn that feeling resistance means they are doing something very important. They learn to see discomfort as the price of admission, which means if they feel discomfort, that means that they are doing the right thing. So actually, those successful people, they learn to become new versions of themselves that do repetitive things, that do the same things that are required for growth over and over, and become the person who operates whether they want or not. It doesn't matter they want or not. If they need to do that, they just take the action and do that. And once you win this battle, everything changes, where you trust your process, and you know doing your outbound create calls, and you know handling objections is very important, it's crucial. Yeah, and you know delivering the quality brings referrals. Once you make your clients successful, you will get the results as well. You will get referrals. So results become predictable, and your weeks stop feeling like chaos and start feeling like a progress towards the clear goals. And most importantly, you see how you change yourself, where you are getting and where you are stopping, so that you can see the bottlenecks. And you are trying to build a business and become someone who runs a business. This is how real success builds. Not in one great day, but in boring, repetitive work until the business becomes unstoppable. Not through one moment of inspiration, but through choosing to do thousands of times when brain wants something easier. And not by staying the same person and trying harder, but becoming someone who completely different, who operates at a completely different level. And that force never goes away, but you become stronger than it is where you become someone it can control. And that's when everything you build starts working. And that's when systematic growth transforms your concept into reality. By the way, if you want to see videos like this to grow your business, subscribe not to miss the next ones. So important is right now to understand where you are going and who you want to actually become to achieve your goals. And to do that, now you know the main and important part is to do the actual work that is important. To go take the action, do the calls, reach out to people, do the follow-ups, and try to make the work that is actually moving the needle and brings you clients and makes you grow. And with that being said, you need to do that actions to come to the next level, not just trying to be busy. And once you understand this, that invisible force will disappear, because you already know how to control it and how to move the needle. Even though you can't do the work, you will still, because of your discipline that you created, you will still do the work.